Amir, you're wearing all black.
I have a funeral today.
Oh.
I'm working it.
Yeah. So, who died?
A young lady,
How old was she?
maybe 60, I believe.
You say young, and my mind goes like 12, 16, 20. She was 60?
She's about 60 or
Okay.
so.
How'd she die?
Natural causes.
In her sleep?
No, she didn't. But they consider cancer natural causes these days.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. So, what kind of cancer?
I don't recall. Yeah.
Was it long and painful?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't ask the family.
Did she leave anyone behind?
Yeah, she had children.
How many?
One,
Oh,
20,
boy, girl,
girl.
single, attached.
Oh, no.
Is there a father around? Husband?
Could be. No husband, no husband.
Is she being buried or cremated?
Cremated.
Oh, who's going to take the ashes?
The daughter.
Do you guys give free urns?
No.
Oh,
Ours are $95 and up.
Costco has some good ones.
They do. And caskets.
Yeah, and their caskets, they have Bluetooth.
It seems like it. It's
Yeah.
expensive as it gets.
Comes with air conditioned heater, massager. Hey, it has a massager too. Let me get one of those for me. Joey, where are the movie tickets? That wasn't really the point. The point, you were supposed to just come to class with like 6 tickets.
You have to pick the movie.
The what?
You have to pick the movie.
Why?
Black Phone, Regretting You.
Ooh, Black Phone?
Yeah,
The hell is that?
it's a horror movie.
Is it like horror? Is it scary?
I mean, I don't think it's scary, but the second one. Shelby Oaks.
Can I tell you a story? I know Lark has like 50 questions, but no, come on. So, when I worked at Church's Fried Chicken in the 1980s, we had no money. In fact, for some weeks I had to sleep on bus benches outside. And there were a group of us, and there was a movie theater, I forget where, on Sacramento somewhere, and tickets were expensive for us. $4, that's a lot of money. I mean, you get paid like $2 an hour, Yeah. And so we used to wait until people would get out from the back door, and then we would go in. People do that right now?
Probably.
Do you have the key to the place? Can you get the key to the place?
I'd probably become a manager.
When is that going to happen?
Never, I don't want to be a manager. Go to Chico.
Oh, that's right, you're going to Chico.
Yeah.
So listen, you need to bring the movie tickets ASAP before you leave. Yeah. Chico, huh? Do you smoke? Good for you. It's a dangerous place to be, Chico. With all that,
I got the good stuff.
Yeah, put some of, the ash of cremated people.
Fall into it.
Yeah. Adrian, what's going on? You here next semester? Are you here next semester? Am I going to see you in any classes? Oh, nothing. It's too much work like this. Joey, are you going to be here next semester? Where are you going?
Monterey.
Monterey. Like Monterey College? What's wrong with Laney College? Yeah, I know.
There's no air conditioning. There's no central air.
That's your problem with Laney? Yeah. It's a beautiful campus, Monterey. That's a nice city. They have, you're not going? Wasting my time like that. I'm almost going on. Like what? Trip for where? Who's there?
Artists that I like.
Over in Japan, who is it?
It's a what? Musician? What they play? What they sing? So what kind of songs? Go ahead, sing us one. Sing us one. I'll give you extra credit. I mean, right now you're failing, so you really need it. Go ahead. Listen up, everyone. Aman is going to sing. You want to come up here, or you just want to sing from there?
I can play a song. What's your favorite?
I'll call Amir, and I'm not gonna sing.
Oh. What song called Amir?
Is it in Japanese? Oh,
Wait, is it just Amir, or is it a song called Amir? Oh. By who?
ADO? Are they Japanese?
Okay, everyone listen up.
What? This is. Hello, Kendra. Welcome to hell. Please. Aman, I must say your taste in music is inspiring. Kendra, are you well?
Wait, are the tickets to the concert or the plane more expensive?
Why don't you go with him?
Yeah, maybe. I'm thinking of playing on Thursday.
Where are you going? Korea?
No, I'm going to Washington.
For what?
More college tours.
Oh, I thought you were going to like a city hall meeting.
Oh, that'd be great.
What college?
Oh my gosh.
But your parents are here. I mean, moving so far away.
I know, but there's not really. I don't really like to do the college on this side.
I mean, you can go away for a couple of years and come back.
I know, I'm checking out so many I can't even.
Yeah. Well, good luck. Arav. Kendra, what's new? Classes are good? You have any interesting students? I had a friend yesterday. She came and visited. She's looking for a man. She can't find any. So, I guess the moment you begin to look for something like valuable, it just no longer exists. So, yeah. Right, Aman? Like music or colleges or the way people die. So, is there anything you guys want to talk about before we go home? Thanks, by the way, for coming to class. I know it's raining. Well, it was. So, if there is anything, yeah, Lark.
Okay. The human nature is mentioned a lot. Like, blah, blah, just means human nature.
It's what?
Human nature.
You
Like,
said blah blah.
blah, 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 blah. Human nature.
Is-
You know, like we use it.
Is it Japanese?
like, really. Is human nature actually real, or is it just like assumed, just used by us to like simplify things and not go into in-depth explanation of why people do things they do?
My kids are not geniuses, and so every time we ask them to play the piano, the first half hour has to do with a lot of screaming, yelling, threatening, and you come to realize that part of perhaps what it means to be human is that when things require effort, sacrifice, it's really difficult because they don't really give you pleasure. They give you a good amount of pain until you become good. That's a different story. Or you give them a taste of an ice cream for the first time in their life, and something about them, it's kind of like Jesus Christ resurrecting from the dead. You know, oh wow, I never knew such things could exist. And then every time you go to the store, they ask for ice cream. And if you don't get it for them, they throw a temper tantrum, no different than when two adults in a relationship don't get along. They throw temper tantrums. You know, and it comes in a variety of different shapes and forms. They either like raise their voice, or one sleeps on the sofa, or one simply says, okay, you know, we're just going to go for a walk, I'll be back like next year. And once they get a taste of ice cream, which is very delicious and pleasurable, you realize that greed comes in. You know, you begin to lust after it. And then when your parents are not there, you open the freezer, you grab a few buckets, and then you put the empty buckets back. And then when your parents ask, what happened to the ice cream? What ice cream? Do we have ice cream? I didn't know we have ice cream. You know. And so you realize that it's, you know, one of the, I think it was Pope Gregory or something around some century, who came up with the 7 deadly sins. You know, it is part of our nature to be proud of who and what we are, even though we haven't really accomplished much. It is part of our nature to compare and contrast. That's why the element of envy comes about. You know, imagine, for example, you had another 16 or 17-year-old in this class, and they come to find that you also like 16 or 17, and they say, man, she asked so many questions. I want to be like that. You know, so this spirit of competitiveness is just inside us. It creates envy. It sometimes deflates your confidence. It sometimes inflates your confidence. When things don't go your way, there's an element of anger that all of us in this class experience. So that is what human nature is. Now, education, if I suppose it was to be done in the proper way, would be the following. Education is supposed to make you a bit more aware and mindful of your own nature. And so the parts that will benefit you and others in society, you'll be educated now where you can actually make them a bit more refined, a bit more mature. And so you can express them in a way that is beneficial to everyone. If on the other hand, education simply has to do with ramming data in your brain and getting yourself a degree, then the human nature will continue to be as raw as it was first given to you. And so you end up someone like Trump, or like a politician, any politician who kind of forgets where they came from and why they went into politics in the first place. You know, it's like a lawyer standing before the Supreme Court justices, or any justice really out there, and ask them, why did you choose to wear that robe? And why did you choose to sit behind, you know, that desk? Go back, not a couple days ago, but go back to when you went to law school. what experience did you actually have that said to you, you know what, you should stop being an engineer or a doctor and you should be a jurist so that you could help the needy and fight for the weak and become their voice. And all of a sudden, a few years pass by and you just happen to be one of the most corrupt. So I suppose there is a part of you that just is very natural, organic. The moment you're born, it just comes with you. And then through training by your parents, by the adults around you, hopefully when you go to school, by your educators, and then by religious traditions and those things. Yeah. Yeah. So, Tammy?
Going back to Monday's conversation,
Monday.
you talked about your teacher and dancing.
Yes.
What was the significance of him having you dance? You connected it with a job interview. Was there some significance to it? Was he trying to prepare you for just to be comfortable?
I don't really think Hussein was very future oriented. I think because he came from a different generation, culturally, he had lived in Iran for about like almost 30 years. I had lived in Iran for only like 11 years. I was a kid when I left. He was an adult, already married. And life in Iran and the culture in Iran, very, 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 very different. The way you interact and the way you kind of unpack ideas. The answer to your question, I think, is like, it's layered. The first, I think, it is really nice when someone has power over you, in the sense that he looks at you and says, Amir, go dance. He is your teacher. He is kind of your spiritual father, if you will. He gives you the sort of nourishment that you can't get from anyone else, anywhere else. I mean, that's one of the things about love. Imagine you fall in love with a man and and someone looks at it and says, why are you so sad? Why do you whine all the time? They're like, 4 billion men out there, just go pick one. You say, no, for some strange reason, this guy I fall in love with and he happens to be my son. He's like my oxygen tank. Without him, I can't do A, B, C, D or anything. And even though when you fall in love, but there is this element of separation, your physical body is under so much attack, i.e. pressure, because of this emotion and your relationship with this person, that the only vehicle perhaps that could be that you could express your feelings and your thoughts and the elements that come with intimacy is through sex. But he is not to be found. So you call Joe Schmo, and you say, well, since my body desires this and desires this to be done with Joe, but Joe isn't here, but Schmo is, I'm going to release this tension with Schmo. The problem with that is love then makes you feel guilty for having done. You've transgressed, not so much against Joe, but against the emotions that live inside you. And so when your teacher asks you to dance and you say no, something happens to you, you kind of feel bad about saying no. It's an act of disrespect, dishonor. The other answer could be that maybe he actually knew what he was demanding, that he knew that I was shy, I was reserved, and one of the ways that I could get out of my own skin was to come out and slowly dismiss, be able to cultivate the capacity to not care about how other people would judge. The problem, they're many-folded, because the moment so when you begin to think about stuff, thinking is always you pushing yourself out. Why did she speak to me that way? Thinking is not very reflective. It's more of a reaction. Reflection, on the other hand, it is very much like turning the other cheek. I'm not going to react to the words you spoke to me. I'm going to take your words in, try to unpack them. Who is Tammy? What is Tammy? What was she going through? So in my head, I have to play this therapist game. Okay? And that's how I keep certain negative emotions inside myself. Okay? When you begin to do more reflection than thinking, it means that you live in a very solitary world on the inside. You rarely come out, and you rarely react to the things out there. You care less for what people say and more for how you want to unpack it for yourself. And the way you unpack it is you want to make sure that it goes according to what Plato said, according to what Jesus said. So even when you have a customer, say at the whatever organization you work for, and you have a customer who just comes very angry or whatever, instead of lashing out, you say, okay, let me put myself in his shoes. I mean, that's the Gospel of Luke, really. Let me figure out what's going on with them. So you react less, you think less, and you reflect more. Then you become addicted to the act of reflection, which means that you begin to enjoy your solitary life. Now, in the interviews, you have to sell yourself. And in order to sell yourself, you have to come out of yourself and say a lot of things that you know to be untrue. One of the problems with reflection is that you need to have a great amount of humility because you stand before many elements unknown to you. Why would a 16-year-old ask so many questions? I mean, it's a mystery. Why would Tammy work for a funeral home? That's another mystery. And so, let's say sometimes you come to this class and you say things in all the wrong ways, or she comes in and says things all the wrong ways. And your task is to, again, go inside and figure out what's going on. Why do you want to react? And then you begin to repress your emotions. So it becomes a very reclusive life. Interviews, you have to sell yourself. Okay? You have to say, if they ask you, well, are you qualified for this position? Now, in moments of reflection, you sit back and you say, man, philosophy, love, of wisdom. Who can love wisdom? It's unknown. It's always absent. How does one love? Because wisdom never answers you back. How do you not give up? I mean, it is a relationship, and you call someone 10 times, they don't reply, and eventually you give up. What is it about this particular relationship, love and wisdom, that you keep calling wisdom, you hear nothing, and yet you don't give up? That makes no sense. And so during the interview, you're supposed to kind of tell the committee of like 10, 15, 20 people how great of a human being and how great of a thinker you are. And that goes against everything you've been doing for the past like 10, 15, 20 years, you see. And then you graduate from that particular aspect of your life, which is you say, I've tried falling in love, let's just say, with wisdom. I can't. Screw it. I'm just going to have fun. So when they ask you, do you think you're qualified for this position? You say, you know what? Who is really? Are you qualified to be a dean? Are you qualified to be part of this committee? What makes anyone qualified for anything? And so the committee begins to giggle a little, they loosen up a little, and even though you say all this gibberish for the next like hour and a half, they begin to like you. And had I danced when I was asked to, I think I would have landed the job maybe 10, 15 years earlier. Because I would slowly be seasoned, to be able to come out and talk about myself in an untruthful but necessary way. But because I continued that particular pattern of behavior, that shyness stayed with me throughout all my years of interviewing, until I came to a point where I just didn't care. I had come to the conclusion that, what? If my life is meant to be spent at the car wash, that's fine, because I get at least 2-3 hours every day, Monday through Sunday, where I can sit, read, write, and think, and be left alone. And I think once that was my stage, I just went out there and just wung it, and it actually felt good. Because you're free. It's like, like students at the beginning of the semester, what are we going to learn in this class? I don't really know. Maybe nothing. Probably nothing. Are you really good at the things you do? Well, no, not really. I want to drop the class. Okay, we'll see you around. Or I'll Google your name and see where you live and come after you. So, yeah. So your question is interesting because it makes me go to a place in the Islamic tradition, all religious traditions, and I suppose if ever you want to recover from any illnesses that you may have, there is a religious component. It's called fasting, and you know what that is. Where in the Islamic tradition, when the sun comes up, you don't really eat, and you wait until the sun goes down. And when the sun goes down, then you're allowed to eat. In places like Saudi Arabia, for example, sometimes the sun is up and running about 15, 16 hours. So you can't eat from 3 a.m. until 11 at night. And once the sun sets, then you eat a few things. There are certain things that all of us think are good for us. If you have a teacher or anyone who cares for you, it's kind of, you're a mother. So you realize that, for example, your daughter goes out, and whenever she goes out, she shows a lot of skin. Now, you're no longer 20, you're like a 50-year-old woman, and you've come to know and understand the nature of men, maybe even the nature of men in Oakland. You also love and care for your daughter. You want to make sure that she's not put in harm's way. So, and you know that your daughter from a very age has this temperament that in a very innocent way, she just likes to wear tight clothes. She likes to show a lot of skin. And now she's like 20, And every time the two of you go to Costco or Safeway or walk around the lake, you see all these men like vultures eyeing her. And so you sit her down and say, honey, listen, I need you to do me a favor. What is it? I need you to fast. Fast? Mom, you're not even religious. I'm not religious. Fast from what? You've been dressing this way for the past 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I know you want to be happy, and I know you want to be in a relationship. But the sort of men who will come towards you are not going to be good for relationship long term. For the most part, they're going to be non-committal. They'll only use your body and then trash you. They will have no respect for what's going on inside you, And then you realize for your daughter to observe this particular insight from you or fasting from you, she needs to make sacrifices. She's believed that the way she dresses, for example, is good for her. She gets a lot of attention. She enjoys that attention. It makes her relevant So one of the things that people around you and close to you can do is they can kind of look at your deficiencies and they can give you tools to overcome them. But for you to overcome them, you have to do as they say. And that's really, really tough because going back to Lark's question about human nature, the element, which is very natural, organic, pride comes up. Who are you to tell me how to live my life? Yeah. I'm an adult, even though I'm like 2. I can think for myself and reflect on this, reflect on that, so shut your mouth. You may be my dad, but you don't own my life. I own my own life, so buzz off. And as a parent or as a friend, what can you do? You kind of just stand back at the sidelines and you just watch, this life to be ruined. And then like the prodigal son, your daughter comes back home after 30, 40, 50 years, says, Mom, now I understand what you told me. So again, had I done what Hussein had asked of me, to some extent, maybe my life would have been slightly different. Had I not met Hussein at all, it's a joke that I always tell my parents. I think my brother and I would have ended up in prison somewhere. Because, you're an immigrant, there is no money, you have no education, and yet you have all these fantasies about how you want your life to be. But to have a relatively healthy and meaningful relationship, to have a nice place to live, to have nice, clothes, you need money. And to get money, you need to, for us selling drugs and then, buying a liquor store and selling alcohol, we couldn't do those things. Culturally, we couldn't. It would bring too much shame to our parents. So the only, place for us was education. But going to school was tough. All these ridiculous instructors saying things that you're not really interested in. So thankfully, this person came to our life, and yeah. So.
Progressively, we're getting farther and farther away from actual nature. Like the technology's advancing and like urban development and stuff. How important is it to more in touch with like the actual natural world? It's the whole of something.
So there are a couple of things. Sometimes when I get tired of writing in my office, I go to Google and I type houses for sale in Auburn. And I'm only looking for houses that have more than 5 acres. And in that area, it's pretty, foresty, very lush. And so, Kendra, did you ever come to Grass Valley with us? Helen's house? So this woman, we met her when she was 89. And she had a huge house, 20 plus acres. Beautiful house, beautiful land. She died, I think, last year, and a realtor called me and said, Helen and I were friends. She had mentioned that you had gatherings at her house, pavilion. If you want to, the house is for sale now, if you're interested. I said, okay, well, how much is it? Well, it's $1 million, or so. I talked to my wife. I said, let's sell everything we have. Our underwears, our shirt, t-shirts, the children, I'll even sell you. And let's move. So what are we going to do? Like in Nevada City. First, it's like 4 hours away. The second, everybody's white, And just to give you some clues, there was a bar there, not too far from Nevada City. I forget what the bar's name was or is, but in front of the door, they had a black man hanging. It's a statue. So there are still places on this, in this country where such images are still okay, And so my wife, who's from Eritrea, East Africa, she would tell me, your kids are like half brown, half black. Are you sure you want to move there with these kids? And so there are these stages that you go through, I think, in life. And I'm not talking about the intense introverts who just dislike the city altogether. Imagine that you live in Oakland and you love how the city provides you with things that come to you so easily. I mean, it's nice to be able to go to Safeway without having a barn where you have to go and grab a chicken and then, cut the head off. So city, despite all of its toxins, it does provide, many comforts. And you don't need to be self-sufficient as a human being, because you walk around town and people look at you, say, "Wow, she's so attractive," or "He's so good looking," and that gives you relevance and meaning. You have access to the internet. You can go to Emeryville and watch a couple of movies. There comes a point where you realize that the city has done something to your soul. And if you're allergic to the word soul, it has done something to your life, or to your innocence, or to your ability to be free, or you've always hated becoming like the rest of us in the city, and now you're confronted with the fact that you've become like one of us, the diseased. But that happens after like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of living in the city. Now, when you live in the city, you grow a lot of attachments to different things. And whenever you become attached to anything, there is a part of you that identifies with that. You are that. I am a student. I live in Oakland. I love Oakland. I love the lake, And so you realize that a good amount of Oakland now lives inside you, and you will do whatever you possibly can to protect the city, even though the city doesn't really care for you, but because you think you own it, right? You fight for it. there comes a point again, one day you wake up, and I don't know how it happens. Sometimes it happens because Socrates walks into your life. Sometimes it happens because your marriage falls apart. Sometimes it happens when your child dies, or whether, something about it just wakes up and you demand from yourself a different lifestyle, And you say, you know what? I want to sell everything that I own, and I want to go to Wyoming, kind of like Robert Redford. I want to buy myself a ranch or a house in the middle of nowhere, Now, in religious literature, city has always been a place of forgetfulness. It has always been a place of corruption and contamination, always, Whereas the forest has always been the place of purity and innocence, a place of remembering, a place of purity. And so one of the things that you encounter between students and teachers then are the following. Teachers are always forest, always pure, because someone like Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi, what exactly is it that they're asking for? They're not asking for your money. Even though, sure, there's a part of who and what they are that's very human, and they do things that you and I do, okay? But about 90% of their message is, take care of the weak, take care of the sick, wash their feet, pay them a visit. These are the things, give them free healthcare, kind of like what Jimmy Kimmel is doing right now, which is, since SNAP is out, I'm going to broadcast our need for food. Just give us food. This is our location, and anybody who wants to come and get some food, you're more than free to come by. And he's chipped in some of his own money, okay? And you don't really need to move to Yosemite to feel this. I think every time you run into a homeless person, the social facade is removed from you. An innocent part of you comes to the surface, and you say, you know what? It's not fair for me to have so much and for them to have so nothing. And so you put your hand in your pocket and you give them 20. You only have 25, but you give them 20. Now, by the time you say, pack up your stuff and move to Yosemite, something really interesting has happened to you. You've come to a place, and it takes some adjustments, but you're almost there. You realize that you don't have very much need for the internet. You don't have very much need for your cell phone. You don't have very much need for human beings. What you, at this stage, need for yourself is being around a lot of trees. It's kind of like what Henry David Thoreau, even though, Walden was not too far, it was like a minute walk from civilization, says, I have no need to go to the city. My theater are the animals that are walking around. The leaves can dance for me. The river can play music for me. And you just sit there in a tiny little cabin that you build with your own hands, and you become very self-sufficient. In other words, you can, for the first time, be your own friend. You can stand your own company. And by this time, you become very, very creative. If on the other hand, your friends have moved to the forest, but you're not at the right place for the move, but because of your friends and you have all these fantasies about yourself, you say, you know what? I think I want to move too. But you go there and you feel anxious and you feel frustrated and you're angry for having made the wrong decision for your life. And then your friendships are destroyed, and then you move back to the city. You say, oh, thank God. So sometimes what happens is people read, for example, on civil disobedience or the life story of Martin Luther King Jr. or whoever your hero may be. And you think that just because you've read something, you have the capacity to embody that particular lifestyle. And you try to mimic it only to realize you're going to be a complete failure. So one of the nice things about, say, being young versus being old is that as you get older, your relationships are more transactional. I give you $10 if you give me this, And if you pay attention to some of the questions that people ask, not so much in this class, but different classes, you realize that they revolve around basically raw, meaningless data because they need to put it down on an exam or a test, versus a class that I think is kind of free flow, this one, where people can genuinely ask like questions that interest them, and they think that are important for them. And so we can wing it any direction, So I suppose if I was to take it back to someone like Socrates and Plato, I would say the following. Plato has parents who are lawyers and are orthodox religionists. His father demands a lot from Plato. Then there is Socrates. Socrates lives in a forest, whereas Plato lived in the city. Socrates' task is to remove the city out of you. Don't come to class for a grade. Come to class with questions that really interest you. And you kind of bang your head against the wall and said, well, what sort of questions can I ask that would interest me? And you realize after a while that the city has just numbed your intellect. The only things that you can ask are questions related to your grade, And so you don't really know how to manage. So because it's uncomfortable, you drop the class and you go away. And you find someone who's a bit more structured, and structured in the sense that they are more attuned to the city life. And so it took about, 2, 3, 4, 5 years or months or weeks, and no one knows what the timetable really is between the intimate relationship that's created between a student and a teacher. But the only task of a teacher is to remove the city life and create this thing called forest, where you become receptive to things organically. And so once the teacher goes inside you like a Dyson vacuum and just sucks everything out and trashes them, then they can begin to put things inside, ideas and other things. Yeah.
Going back to the less fortunate and people not having enough.
Yeah.
And us as people feeling guilty about it not having, and then in your pocket giving somebody who has a little bit something. Is it right or fair for people to say, let me take a step back and say, why should I give to this person when they are afforded the same opportunity in terms of education, in terms of a job? They can get a job, they can get education. Why should I feel sorry, or why should I give? Is it okay to feel like that?
There is. Your question is so interesting, and I think it is so profound. Hi, Joey. What's up with it? Now, I'll tell you a story. When I was I think I was like 19 at the car wash, we had, a couple customers, and they used to always come together and we would wash their cars. Very, very pleasant people. He was a truck driver. Hello, Abi. How are you? What happened to your daughter? She's feeling better now? She brought Bodhi in yesterday. That's her 7-year-old, 8, 9, 10, 7. So, hello. Very pleasant people. One day he comes in and his wife is not in the car. And I ask him, so how's so-and-so? She left me. What do you mean she left you? She left me. And then he started sobbing. I'm like 20 and this guy's like 50. And, it's kind of embarrassing that a 40-year-old, you sit there and this 50-year-old man is like crying and you as a 20-year-old have no idea what the hell to do. A complete stranger. Say, well, I'm really, really sorry. Is there anything, we can do? And it's a family business, so everybody knew our family. Even, Roseville police. So whenever we ran a traffic light, they would stop us. Oh, it's you. It's okay. Just be careful. And so his wife, would drive to the car wash and say, so how are you doing? And of course, we would never pry and just ask some leading questions, but she would never reveal anything. And every time this guy would come in, he would say, can you please ask my wife to take me back?
Oh.
And then one day she comes in, and in the passenger seat, there's a strange fellow sitting. She says, "Oh, hi, this is my boyfriend, Joe Schmo." So, well, that's the end of that, you know. And so one day this man, and we didn't see him for like a few months, he comes in and he weighs like 80 pounds.
Oh.
80 pounds. He looks bad, and he says, "I've been sleeping in my car." And the point I'm trying to make is the following. There are certain events where one thing leads to another, where you realize you have suffered too many losses and you can't wrap your mind around them. And then your confidence goes away. Your life basically falls apart. And this idea that, well, you know, Home Depot is hiring, won't you go and do an interview? You no longer see it within yourself to dress well, to shave, to shower, to go sit and pretend as if your life is okay, because it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. And so and for most of us, we don't really know the background and the backstory. All we see is a man. I mean, you know, you go on college, there are these women, and they're sitting with a huge sign, you know, and they have their like infants in their hands. And they have like a 2-year-old playing with a cell phone and a 5-year-old. They're not going to school, they're just sitting, you know, in the middle of nowhere asking people for money. Is it true that it may have become a business in 2025? Absolutely. Is it also true, I mean, I don't know. Is it also true that they've gone through so many difficult times that they no longer see themselves inspired and motivated enough to actually go seek, like anything that gives them stability? Our own lives are far too busy. It really, these days, takes too much to care. And I think after a certain age, it's just difficult to care. You know, in your 20s, you can ask all these wonderful questions, you know, because you're young, because when you're young, you have the privilege of just being young and having all these dreams, not tested by life. And you're really just outside of life. You know, you don't have a job that sucks your soul dry. You don't have a relationship that sucks your soul dry. You don't have relationships that are just transactional, you know. You don't come home exhausted because life has just sucked the soul out of you. You don't have to look at your companion and realize you guys have nothing in common, you know, those things. And so at a certain point, you say, you know what? This is just another homeless person amongst a sea of homeless people. You know, if someone catches my eye, and if I happen to be in a particular mood, then sure, I'll give them $10. Yeah, but do you sometimes whisper to yourself, "You're just a goddamn 20-year-old, you know, go get a job at In-N-Out, that's like $25 an hour. You know, what are you doing in the middle of the street?" You know? And then you wonder, don't they have parents? You know, and then you say, well, you know, I mean, you and I are parents. I mean, Avi is a parent, and, you know, you guys are parents who've given up on you, but, you know, I mean, we are parents. And after a while, you realize parents just can't do it anymore. After a while, they say, you know, I gave you a roof over your head. I made you like lasagna. I you know, wash your underwear and pay for your school. You're just a complete fuck up. You know, what can I do? You know, I can't just come home screaming, you know, every single day. I'm just exhausted. And then, you know, you sit there and you are on your video game playing for like 12 hours. And once in a while you wake up, I mean, you look up and your mom is looking at you and you say, huh, you know, I've been playing for 6 hours and she hasn't said anything to me. There's a reason. She's given up.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to hell. She won't care. So now the question is, should you play a psychologist? You know, should you go in your head and say, well, you know, there's a reason why this guy is not looking for a job and asking for like $10. You can, if you have the energy and if it's the stage of life you're in. If, on the other hand, you're not there, but you feel guilty for walking away and not being empathetic, don't care. I mean, you should learn this beautiful lesson from our Jewish prophet Moses and our Christian prophet Jesus. You know, Moses, you know, he is a pharaoh, or going to be one. He has this illuminating experience. He rescues his people. And at every turn, he comes to realize no matter what he does, they remain pieces of shit, you know. And then he looks at his brother Aaron and says, Aaron, here's my staff. I give up. You take care of these idiots, you know. Or you have someone like Jesus, you know, especially in the Gospel of Judas. He says, you know what, I've tried down here. It just doesn't work. Judas, give me to the Romans, let them kill me. And, you know, once I'm dead, I can no longer see people. I can no longer see their pain. I can no longer see the pain that's coming to them. And so my soul can go back to God, very much like what V said in V for Vendetta, you know, where Evie goes to rescue him, take him to Kaiser. He says, no, please, let me go back to my maker. You know, I'm done with people down here. Or Socrates. He's given a choice of either continuing his life, you know, in his home with his wife and kids, or dying. And he says, you know what? I've tried talking to people. They have concrete in their heads. I'd rather die. So I think the lesson is, all of us in this class do help other people.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have to do it on a massive level. You have a classmate. Hello. You have a classmate who's like failing the class, like Adrian. And you kind of feel bad for him because he's a nice guy. And you say, Adrian, you know, if you need help, I can give you like 2 hours of my life. And that's the stage you're in. Time passes, then you have another Adrian. Not you, another one. You know, not only is he failing, but he hasn't showered, he has no money, he hasn't eaten. And the only thing you give him is your finger, the one that counts, the middle one. You know, is it true that once in a while you you look yourself in the mirror and you say, you know, it was just a few years ago where I would give a homeless man $10, but now I just give him the finger. What happened to me? Am I no longer a Christian? You are. You're just a different kind of a Christian. You're very selective now. You know, kind of like Jesus. You know, he goes out, he talks, and then he goes back home and says, please, I don't want to see anyone. Sigmund Freud, you know, he loved people. At a certain point, he realized that he doesn't love people. What he loves is the stories that live inside people. You know, the stories inside people are like puzzles. He likes to solve those puzzles. But he became annoyed with people's facial expression and body language. So they said, he's, you know, calls IKEA and says, can you guys deliver me a sofa? And the sofa is taken to the shop and he's, you know, begins to tell his customers that when you guys want to talk to me, lay down. So I don't have to see your face. You know, I just need to hear your voice and your story. Yeah, there comes a point where you just don't care. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, it's really good. I'm on.
Does it become a lot more common that people make fools of themselves?
Say again.
Does it become a lot more common for people to make fools of themselves in public? My question is, how do people, I guess, abandon their dignity for independence?
When I first started teaching, of course, I didn't know much about drugs. I still don't, because I never tried them. But when I heard of marijuana, for example, I began to ask my students, does anyone in this class smoke marijuana? Not a single hand would go up. Today, when I ask people, like, hands go up. You know, not one or two, like the entire class.
Yeah.
You know, when I used to ask, does anyone watch porn? No hand would go up. It doesn't mean that people didn't smoke or didn't watch porn. It just meant that the culture made a certain kind of parents. The culture had certain narratives. The parents had certain narratives about how to be a parent and how to raise children, you know, in society. And so even though if you were to do like some naughty things behind closed doors in public, you would never raise your hand and broadcast what you do, okay? Now comes 2025, for example. How many of you watch porn? Every hand goes up, you know. How many of you like smoke ABCD? All hands go up. And then you sit back and you say, okay, what has happened? Not so much to the individual, because you're part of a culture that has a tremendous amount of force, and you're no match for that force. You're just a twig, a tiny little branch, and the tsunami is coming your way. And what happens when you stand before a tsunami? You break. In other words, whatever dignity you thought you had, the culture is going to just take it away. And it's going to be replaced by a different set of things, okay? Consider, for example, the presidential debates in the past, as far as back, I can remember, Carter and Gerald Ford, Carter and Reagan, Reagan and Mondale, Reagan, I think, and Dukmasian, and then Clinton and Bush, and then Clinton and Romney, and then Obama, and then Trump. I had never heard until 2016 where you have a candidate to be the president of this country to come on the stage and actually use foul language and demean people. You sit back and say, what has happened to our culture where people actually embrace that? When Jimmy Carter was asked, and this is of course a long time ago in the 1980s, do you ever fantasize about women? And his very eloquent answer was, I have lust in my heart. That was his answer. And there was all this, newspapers, running ads saying how awful this man really is. This is the 1980s. A couple of decades later, you have someone like Trump calling people all sorts of names. And then you can ask, well, what has happened to the dignity of politicians? And I guess my answer to your question is, when you create a culture where everything has a green light, then everything goes. Everything becomes acceptable. Everything is normalized. Now, are there going to be exceptions to this? Absolutely. If you have been raised, you may be American and you may have lived in Oakland, infested by drugs and violence and this and that, but you came from a relatively good background. You speak eloquently, softly, respectfully. You don't smoke, you don't drink. Are you exception to the rule? Absolutely. Because of the narratives given to you. But for the most part, we are creatures of our culture. First, it's our parents, then it's our immediate surrounding, neighbors and those things. Then, of course, education, then the media, and then the historical aspect of the culture itself. I'm from Iran. So the moment I'm born, I have 4,000 years of story inside me. There isn't much I can do about that. Yeah. Yeah.
He's the mayor in New York City. He's a democratic socialist. And I don't think there's ever been another democratic socialist mayor that And we were talking
He's single, right? He's single.
I'm single.
No, he's single.
Single? Oh.
Yeah. So when you're 18, maybe you could.
He's a cool guy, though. I don't know.
You don't think he's good looking?
He's good looking, but I'm not into him.
But no one's really into anyone. It just happens.
Right. I must be a man. So my mom has a problem with taxes because really rich people in New York City are going to get taxed a lot more. But he's a socialist, so he's trying to get there's a lot of poverty in New York City, so he's kind of trying to bring everything up to the middle, so less poor people and less billionaires. Do you think that the contrast between a lot of poor and a lot of rich people is that important to society? Because it happens everywhere. Is that a bad thing? Things should be centralized, like socialism, or just anything that's more what's better?
Lark, money is good. Money gives you power. Money buys you a big house in the forest. When you have a lot of money, you become like honey. And then you have a lot of friends like flies hovering around you, not because they love you, they just like the sweetness of power. we're not really talking about money. What you're talking about is an element that gives people power, which gives people a lot of pleasure. And so in order for you to balance things out, you have to educate people about pleasure, about power, about the intoxicating nature of power and pleasure. You know, imagine, there is this wonderful story, I think it's in the Gospel of Luke. Tammy knows this much better than I. It's about the rich young man. You know, I mean, we actually lived at a time where money was demonized. The more money you had, the less people respected you, because money equaled a great amount of sin and corruption within. Okay, so this rich young man goes to Jesus and says, you know, you've been talking about eternal life and God within and all that. I want that. Now, at what stage does a rich man goes to Jesus and say, I want that? Well, it means that he's had enough sex to know that sex is not the answer for him anymore. He's bought enough Teslas to come to realize that just because you have a Rolls Royce or a this or that, that doesn't really take you anywhere either. You've had big houses, you've had this, you've had that, so you must be saturated from physical life, okay? And so you begin to have some thoughts inside your head. You know, I've had all this money, I've tried to make myself happy, but the problem is everything I touch after a while, I lose interest. Is there anything that I can touch, I can own, that it can forever remain young? And he listens to this guy's preaching and he says, well, you know, he's promising me this promised land that never grows old. You never get tired of it. Maybe I should go look for that. And he says, well, how can I, you know, find eternal kingdom? And he says, well, go sell everything you have and then follow me. Now, there are a couple of things. By the time you become rich, you have some stories about money, you have some addictions related to money and power. You also have a relationship with all the things that money has afforded you. Okay? You're addicted to having lots of friends around you because they want your money, you know. And so, and if your entire life you've identified yourself as a rich dude, for example, it's really difficult to kind of empty that perspective you have about yourself and trash it, you know, because you don't know who you're going to be if you have no money. I mean, the idea that Elon Musk has board members and they want to gift him with like $250 billion, it makes no sense. You know, that's like a lot of 100 bills wrapped around the globe, you know, like 50, 60,000 times. And so, then he says, come follow me. Okay. Now, so there are two steps. First, get rid of what you have. Once you're empty, you take a leap of faith. Come follow me, but you're not going to have any idea as to where I'm going to take you. That requires a faith that most of us don't really have. Now, he gets stuck on the first step, which is give up. And that should tell you how difficult it is. You know, going back again to the question of human nature, the first thing is that pride, you know, I want money, I need money, I like power, you know, power does me this, power does me that. And you like the fact that other people envy you. You become the center of their attention. And then they put you on the stage where they worship you as Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, you know, and these are all enjoyable things. If your question is it possible for us to educate those people so they can come down here? A couple of things. It has taken me, someone who does philosophy and does all this talk, many, many years to come to realize, you know what? I don't really need to teach extra classes to make more money. I don't give a shit. You know, if I am given enough, like, allocations, FTE, if that's what we call it. I will teach 5. I will give 1 to one part-timer, another class to another part-timer, another one to another. Well, it take me like, you know, some 20 years to get there. Could you call me a socialist? I suppose in the realm of education you can, but it took me a long, long time. After coming to realize, yes, I made some money. Yes, I did get a full-time job. Yes, I am tenured. Yes, I am the chair. But who gives a shit about any of that? Part-timers have lives. They have mouths to feed. There is no reason for you to be, like a pig, hog everything. So educating people on that realm is really, really tough. The other aspect is I don't know what the other aspect is. I forget. The other thing really is, can I just say, like in a very rough, vulgar way, life is just a fucked up business. There is injustice on every aisle, in every aisle, and on every shelf. Some people just have good looks. What can you do? You go to a party to meet someone, and everybody's like going over there. What can I do? Nothing. I just go home feeling alone and useless. Some people are just born in a rich environment like Carlton. Some people are born in a crummy environment like, what's his name? Prince of Bel-Air. There's Carlton and there is Will Smith. Yeah. So, Dustin Hoffman, some years ago, he was given an Oscar. I think he played this movie called Kramer versus Kramer. Really, really good movie. It's about a couple who love their kid, but they didn't get along, and so they divorced, and now the court had to decide who's going to get the kid. When he was presented with the Oscar, he said, this is just such an unfair system. There's so many talented actors and actresses out there who are just like flipping burgers or, driving taxis. And, you have all these people, whose names are on the envelope, and they're equally just as good as I am. And for some strange reason, they're going to give it to me. Why? Why not just create like 5 statues, these Oscars, and give it to all of us instead of like making this another ridiculous competition? I think we all have our moments where we want to be a socialist, where we realize that meritocracy doesn't really exist. What you really want is like community or communism, where you realize that society is this pot where everything needs to be shared equally. It's just a tough place to be and a tough thing to embody and to bring down. It just doesn't work. You have one child? See, Abi has 2 kids. And here's the thing you need to know. And you're the only child, right? Talk to your mom. And she'll tell you something that may be disturbing. As a parent, you spend, how old is your brother or sister? So you're 3 years, okay. So for the first 3 years of your parents' life, you had 100% of their attention. 100%. If you've seen the movie Baby Boss, 100% of their attention. Then at a certain point, your parents probably either just had casual sex and something happened, or they said, you know what, it's not good for Lark to go through life by herself. Let's give her a brother or a sister. Okay. And this time sex had a purpose, it was like Genesis. You have sex to procreate. Okay. It's not so much about pleasure, but it's about keeping Lark company. Was there a bit of jealousy on your part? You were far too young to remember, but I'm sure there were. But if you pay attention to your parents' engagement with your brother now, you realize that, well, it is true they're no longer able to give you 100%, but your brother now only gets about 30% of their attention. Because now you get 50%, he gets 30%, and the 20% energy they have left, they give it to life. So they scream at your brother more and at you less. Now your question is, well, how do I make my parents love both of us equally? And the truth is, human nature is just unjust. It creates this unfair system. And they love both of you, but they just love you a bit more. Unless, of course, you become an addict, you go into a string of bad relationships where you completely disgust them. They'll still love you more, but if you mess them up, things will get messed up for your younger brother. Because when the older kid messes a parent up, it's very difficult for them to recover. Because in you lives hopes that they don't have for your brother. I mean, the new parents, we always have the best hopes in our first relationship. I'm going to love, I'm going to marry, I'm going to have 50 kids with this person. Then things turn to shit. And then the next relationship you go and you say, you know what? Maybe. So, and I don't know how you can create justice in life. Right, Joey? A 6-year-old, cancer, dead. My father's like 92, he's healthy. Where's the justice in that? So, yeah, I mean. So, Kendra, anything? What time is it? For those of you who have nothing to do, I have a class next period. Oh, we have like a quickie, 2 minutes. Envy? If you need to go, go. It's okay. Don't worry. If you need to go, you can't. You stay. I'm just kidding. I was sitting with my son yesterday, whom you've met plenty of times, and I say, Yusuf, what made you interested in soccer? He looks at me and says, Cristiano Ronaldo. It's because I poisoned him, contaminated him. And he looks at Ronaldo, the way he jumps, and he copies him when we're on the field. When he kicks, his stance is very much like Ronaldo's when he wants to do a free kick. He envies him as a human being. How could a human being jump like 10 feet high? How could a human being run so fast? That envy has inspired him to think about soccer and to get video games that have to do with soccer. To every time we go out, he buys yet another soccer ball, another cleats, another shirt. I keep telling him, I'm on the verge of bankruptcy. Can you stop this? And so what envy does, it forces you to look at another human being and you say, I want what he has, or I want what she has. And then you try very hard to obtain. You go through all this journey to get what you desire. And so it has a very competitive spirit to it. Now, the negative side of envy is that, sure, there's an aspect to it where you become competitive and it helps you grow and mature and become very focused. The negative part is that should you not get to where you want to be, if you want to be like Ronaldo but you realize you can't, if you want to be like a Mike Tyson or Kobe Bryant but you realize you can't, then envy turns into anger. And then any regular chap who exhibits elements of Ronaldo, you become jealous of them. Now, sometimes anger can be inward, sometimes anger can be outward. Some people like to cut because their parents have hurt them, They have no power to hurt their parents back. And one thing that they do is they cut themselves. That's how they kind of release their frustration and pain a little bit. So again, the point is the 7 deadly sins. They all have negative elements to them and positive elements to them. If you've been locking yourself up in a room and practicing piano for the past 10 years, man, you should be very, very proud because you live in an ocean of people where everyone lives complacently and in sloth. They go nowhere, they do nothing, they just eat and shit. Okay? You, on the other hand, you found your passion and you honor that passion and you become very proficient in that passion. So yeah, you have every right to go to Zellerbach Theater, play for an audience of 5,000 and then stand up and be very, very, very proud versus someone who doesn't read, doesn't think, doesn't reflect, doesn't observe, and then says, I'm a Christian. Why? Because your parents were one? And now you come to class and you think that you know a few things about Trinity? You know, so again, yeah, so negative, positive. Joey, you like purple? You must like Prince. Were you sad when he died? He wasn't very good. Yeah.
Is being good at what you do or being like in lives, is that a good thing? Or how do you deal with people's ignorance? Is that
Can I make this personal? Come in. So,
Hello.
oh, hello.
How you doing?
Keith, right?
Julian.
Julian. Who's Keith? Okay, Julian, it's good to see you. So when I was young and very confused, you know, your self-confidence is in the toilet. You look at your brother, he's accomplished, so you envy and are jealous of him. And then you're angry because he's so good and you suck as a human being. And then I met Hussein. He makes you feel even worse. But at the same time, he becomes a GPS, you know. So he becomes like my Cristiano Ronaldo of philosophy. I want to be like him, think like him, behave like him, all those things. And for the first time in my life, I realized that I'm really, really enjoying these books. I begin to read books in Persian, Arabic, in English, and I just lock myself in a room and just read. And then I go to Home Depot and I buy myself, and there was no Home Depot, there was Ace. If you go to Ace, I buy a bucket of paint, black. I paint my room black. And, you know, from head to toe, it's all black. And then I remove my bed and I sleep on the floor. And winter time, I only have a sheet on me because I want to freeze to death so that the freeze can wake me up so I can do what I need to do. Okay. And for the first time, you know, I say, man, I'm reading all this stuff. I have all this information in my head, I have all these experiences. So my father and I get into like some religious conversation. And I demolish him. Now, how old is my father? Like, he's like 55. How old am I? This like 19-year-old piece of shit, right? And say, man, yeah, my father's an imbecile. He doesn't know anything, you know. And, you know, my father only has a 6th grade education. And that's how things used to be way back then. And then I have my own group of friends. You know, at the age of 19, we get engaged in conversations. And I demolish them too. And I feel good. But when I go to Hussein's house, I'm just like meek, innocent, very receptive to ideas, you know. But outside, I'm a lion. When with him, I'm like a lamb, you know, ready to be slaughtered. And then I walk into my classroom. And you don't know how you're going to be in the classroom, if you're going to like suck as an instructor, if you're going to be exciting, inspiring. So it really is a shot in the dark. You know, it's like you read all these books about love, but you have no idea how you're going to be in one. You get in one and realize, man, you're really, really good, or you're really, really terrible. And so you realize, yeah, in the classroom, you're a little animated, and you bring in a little Eastern tradition and a Western tradition and your own stupid tradition, and it's like this soup that has all sorts of things in it, and students sit back and say, wow, this is really good stuff. And they come to you and say, oh, by the way, my wife said this, or my husband said that, or I'm dealing with this. And you say, oh, I'm only like 25, and all these people are asking like these perennial questions, questions that have existed for thousands of years, and they're coming to me. So at a certain point, my dean called me and says, you want to teach this emeritus class? Emeritus? What the hell is emeritus? It's like, you teach in a classroom non-Western psychology. Who are my students? People, all of them over the age of 65. I said, Bill, I'm like 20. Well, you have a master's, and so if you want to teach this, you can do it. So I walk in the classroom, all these people, World War I, World War II, World War III, some of them come from the Stone Age era. And I just look at myself and say, what am I going to do with these people? And then my mouth opens and I begin to talk, and you have a woman in the back, crying now, she's inspired. You have another guy, like on the ground, banging his head. And then, that class ends, a new semester comes, and all these old people just walk into my class and sit, and it makes you feel good. And it makes you like, have this illusion in your head as if like you have something very unique and special. So you begin to bulldoze people. At a certain point, you realize that, you really don't amount to anything. You're just still, you were once a piece of shit. You're just now a more eloquent piece of shit, but you still smell. And so like any form of intoxication, you get drunk, you loosen up, you do all sorts of stupid things, and you say all sorts of stupid things. I still do sometimes, many times. And then there comes a point and you say, you know what, I just don't want to get drunk anymore. And I don't want to say stupid things anymore, and you begin to act a bit more mature, just a bit more mature. And then the rest of us, as you gain more experience in life, it really does humble you. I mean, initially you're 18, you walk into a relationship and you say, yes, I know love, Then you're 35, you're single, you're alone, you realize how complicated relationships really are. But it took you about 20 years. I don't think there is anyone out there who doesn't have nuggets of wisdom within. We all do. I think we have difficulty expressing them. We have difficulty putting language to them. And we have difficulty embracing the fact that we are, for the most part, just failures in many areas of life. So... I mean, Tammy's gonna go burn somebody out there. Yeah. For those of you who want to stay, you can stay. For those of you who want to leave, you can leave. Yeah. Adriana? Adrian? Adriana, right? Yeah. Justin? Julian? Where are you going? What happened to the tickets? Tommy, it's good to see you. It's good to see you.